Hey guys, welcome back to Bensville Custom. So today we're going to do a work in progress video of keying this Godzilla and Mothra together so this way it looks like they're fighting and it actually supports everything. So someone I know in the hobby for a long time, they asked me like my thoughts on how to key all this stuff, and the way it works is Godzilla is on the base like this. There's really no, can't really find a specific spot for him, so I'm going to have to find something that works. And then Mothra is supposed to be flying on top of him like so. Now, he suggested like, do I just put like a metal rod, put a metal rod up in here and have Martha like this? But it kind of looks weird having a metal rod. And even if you do a clear plexiglass rod or something, you risk it breaking and it still looks a little weird. So I suggested to him, why don't you attach him to the tail and it looks like he's sort of flying like this way, something like that. So we got to talk and everything, and I suggested, and he asked me, like, do you want to try to do it? And I said, yeah, I'll do it for you. So I'm going to be putting this together and keying it up. I'm not painting it. I'm not putting it all together as like a final thing. I'm just going to do the keying thing, and I'm going to let him put it together. I mean, I don't mind painting like Godzilla type stuff, but it's not really my wheelhouse, and I'm not really into it too much. So it should be pretty much straightforward. And one other thing too is Mothra has these wings, right? So these are the smaller wings, and there's actually bigger ones here. Now, see how this kind of flops? It's very thin. So I suggested to him is you take like a metal rod and you put it into one of these like vein area things here with some aves underneath of it, just to help it from over time from not falling. You don't want to put it on top of it, you want to put it on bottom. Now this is like a steel metal rod. The problem with these though is to try to bend this to go around might be a nightmare, so I might have to use brass. I'm not really sure. I figure what I'll do is maybe like one here and then like one here just to support it. It's going to be a little bit thicker on the bottom, but in the long run you don't want this flopping, because this resin, you can almost see through it, and then you could tell over time that like if this is hanging on Mothra, it's just going to start sagging down over time with heat and cold and stuff like that. So if you at least put like a metal rod up in here with some A's and kind of thick it up at the bottom, it'll kind of stay up where you need to do it. So that's kind of what I'm going to do for the wings, and then that's it. But as far as the Godzilla and stuff, so I'll show you what's going on with this. It's going to be a little tricky, but it's really not. It's just a matter of grinding out the tail, adding a rod, bending the rod, and getting everything situated. So Godzilla's pretty thick, but the base is not. See, the base is all hollow underneath and everything. So whenever I find the spot of what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to put some Aves and stuff under there when I put the hollow brass rod there. So my suggestion was, and I think the best way of doing this is, we're going to find the spot for Godzilla, but I don't need to find it just yet. I don't need to worry about that yet. So I have my key stock. This is just your square key stock. It's 3/16 by 12 inches zinc plated. This is steel, so it does magnetize, but we don't have to worry about the magnetized stuff. So what I'm going to do is, right about here is where the tail, this is going to lock into the base, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind out this tail up around here, and then what I'll do is it's just a matter of sitting this rod and bending it, hitting it with a hammer, using my vice grips and stuff. So I have to keep this straight, but I have to bend this rod coming up over here. And then when I get this to about this tail here, I'm going to bend out the rod, so this way Mothra, I can actually Dremel out an area here, depending on where, the wings and stuff go, and I can have it set here. So this way, this rod will be bent up in the tail, but it'll stay up in here, so you'll be able to put Mothra into the tail area, and it'll look like he's flying over Godzilla, and you have all of this supported, so it'll look good. That is the best way I figured about doing this. The only other thing I suggested to him was like, well, if you wanted to get a 3D print and print a tree, or power lines and stuff, and put it there, and then get Mothra onto the tree or power lines, but then you still have to do all the rotting and stuff like that. So I think this is the best bet. But I mean, once this is done, if he wanted to, he can add a power line over here, or he can add a tree. He doesn't have to worry about it. So the goal is, wherever I figure, once I get this done, because I'm going to start Dremeling this out, I got to start like bending the rod and getting into this tail. I'm going to grind all this out and then rebuild this area in here. So I'm going to rebuild it the best I can with some Aves. But I think once it's done, it'll look fine. And the idea is, you put Godzilla into the base with that rod that sticks there, and then you'll connect Mothra here, and then from there he can actually fill up the bottom of the base with some putties or clays or whatever. He can add a tree, and he can do everything he wants to it and stuff. And then the idea is Mothra with these wings. I forget if the bottom wings are, yeah, so I guess the bottom wings go like there. So I just have to make sure that it goes into this way. Probably gonna have to kind of come up at an angle and support it from there, and it should work out pretty well. So I just have to make sure that wherever I do it, like if I have to move Godzilla up a little bit more, you know, and kind of put him like there, then I'll have to do it like that. Or if he needs to go up a little bit higher, type thing. So I have to position it where it looks good on the base. You don't want to do it, not pay attention, and all of a sudden Mothra's sitting all the way back here and stuff. Kind of want to try to get Godzilla up back there as best as I can and do that. So I got to plan that out. But for right now, the idea is just get my Dremel tool, start dremeling out this tail, get all this grinded up to about there. Then after that, get this rod. So this rod should be long enough to go into the base with a bit, bend it around, and then kind of kick it up over here. And then what will happen is once I figure out where that's going and I get the rod all built up, and wherever I get Godzilla, I'll do some marks and stuff. I'll put some like AUs or magic scope. I don't have magic scope. AUs down at the bottom of this base, get this part done, and start keying this in, and then start building everything back up and get Mothra going. So it's a little bit tricky, but it's really not. When I first saw this a few months back when we talked about it, and then I haven't looked at it in a while, I kept on thinking this tail was humongous. I kept on thinking the tail was like, you know, a 20-inch tail. I didn't have enough rod, but then when I pulled it out of the box to start the video, I realized, oh, this 12-inch rod will be fine. It'll work out, not a problem. So the only thing, and then after that's done, I'll just pull out these wings one day. I'll go get some brass rods, and I'll just kind of, you know, sturdy them up and everything. And then once that's done, I pass it back to my friend who'll be able to start painting this and building it and doing this thing to it. So, you know, we'll see it finished whenever he's done with it down the line and stuff. But at least we can get this to the point where it's done. One last thing. He mentioned to me with this kit that it's a very, very popular kit. But the thing is, it's not really built by a lot of people, what he told me, because they can't figure out how to get Mothra set up or something. I'm not really sure. But if anyone does have this kit or they're looking to do it, or if you're a Godzilla fan and you have something like this, maybe this will give you an idea on how you can like key stuff together and make it look like a fight scene without worrying about stuff breaking or how it's going to look good. So let me go ahead and start dremeling out this tail. I'll get this all grinded up, and then we'll start lining things up, start mixing up our supplies of A's and whatever chemicals I need to do. We'll line them up and start putting it together. Okay, so what you're seeing is, I'm not going to get a perfect curve, and it doesn't really matter that it's not a perfect curve, because trying to make a perfect curve is just, I don't have the tools. I would need like an anvil. If I had an anvil, I probably could, but doing it this way is fine. So what I'm doing is, when I'm putting it in the piece, I'm pushing up on the top area, and I'm hitting it here, because what happens is, if you try and hit it with your hammer, it's just going to keep bonding back and forth on you, and you actually might snap it. So if you just put a little pressure on it and you hit that area, you sort of start bending it. So now that we have the premise of the curve coming in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this part coming at an angle coming out. So I just got to kind of, I'm marking it and I'm going to bend this out. Now I gave myself enough meat here and I gave myself enough meat here in case I need to chop this down. Alright, so we got the rod pretty much bent up and we have him positioned in a good spot. So we're going to be putting him right about there. I'm going to have to leave it up to my friend if he needs to throw any kind of putties or A's to do something with the landscape. But we're pretty much lined up. Now the only issue I'm running into right now is how Mothra is going to be connected. So as you see, we got our curve coming up and I drilled a hole here. And as long as I line this up correctly, right, it should go straight into the base with no problem. But the problem is this bar is coming up this way. So I need this bar to kind of be bent this way a little bit. So this way, Mothra can actually kind of like connect into here like this, sort of, or like that. So what I need to do is probably like right about, let's see, kind of get this here set up here. So if it's like right about there or so, it's coming out. This right about here has to sort of be bent that way. So now we're starting to go into another different angle. So you got to be careful how I do this. So I'm going to kind of do this off camera because I got to sort of line this up. So this has got to be sort of bent this way. So I want to hold it correctly, put it in the vice grip correctly, and then bend it. Alright, so I cut the top of this and everything, and it's a little bit wonky, so I got to kind of flatten it out to make sure it goes into the hollow brass rod, and over here it's kind of wonky. So what I do is I have these spin wheel sandpapers. These burn out really fast, so if you're not careful with these, they flop off, and you got to unscrew it and put another one on, but it's a great way of buffing these up. So I'm going to buff up both edges of this and get it ready. So this way, if we put a hollow brass rod into Mothra, and we're able to kind of get this in there, it'll work. What happened was I was I was sanding down this part and it got let go of my hand real quick. It went into the spin wheel and it kind of grinded it up, but that's okay. It's gonna get all cleaned up and we're gonna be able to put it in one of these pieces where it goes in and out. But right now it won't do it because it's got a lot of glue from the sticker. So I gotta get all that off. Okay, so I think I'm pretty much at the point where it's all set up, so you can see the rod's all bent up and everything. We're going to be putting it in here. So before I do any more bending or any kind of planning, we want to make sure Mothra is going to set up. So you can't sit here and do this without having at least the wing in. So you want to make sure you at least have one of the wings in. So this piece will go here. Now the problem is if I try to put him in there, this wing's going to hit. So I'm thinking we're going to have Mothra sort of, I might have to come up a little bit higher with this. I might have to come up just a little bit higher. It's kind of falling down, so. Well, it should work pretty good. It should work, like even if the wing sort of hits the tail a bit, it should be fine. I'm trying to think here. Now, who's to say Mothra can come a little bit this way too? You know? Yeah. So I think if we go in this direction, all the stuff should work out pretty well. And if I get a rod in there, it should go down pretty good. Should go down pretty good with a little bit back. Yep, we should be pretty good. I just got to make sure I lift it up as high as I can, which I think will work. So now there might be a tiny bit of a little bit of a rod sticking out at the bottom over here, but as long as it's like hidden, it should work. Let's see, I'm just trying to double check. I think what I'm going to do is just drum rod a little bit underneath here, a little bit more, and then this rod should go up enough and it should fit in pretty well. Just let's double check some more area here. Yeah, just a little bit of drumming out there. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to take this into the studio. And then what I'll do is I'll add a little glue in here to line this up correctly. And then after that, shove a bunch of A's, let the A's sort of lock in place, right? And then once the A's are sort of locked in place, work on Mothra to get Mothra set up here, get the base set up, and then afterwards detail everything. Just in case I have to go back in and do the rod over or something's messed up. at least you don't want to detail all this up and then have to chop it again. So we'll just get this locked into place, we'll get everything else positioned, and then from there we can do all the detailing work. Okay, so I got my gel glue and I got my Instaset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up correctly where I need it, which is like right about there, something like that. And once that sort of sets, then I'm going to put a bunch of A's in there and lock it into place. And then we'll let this set up for the night, and then we'll come back the next day and start doing everything. What I think I'm going to probably do is I'll fill up some A's in this hole too as well. Just get a bunch of A's in there, fill it in, maybe slap some Bondo or something around it too, whatever I need to do. And then from there, tomorrow I can Dremel it out, or I can put some A's in there and I can just like put a hole through it too as well. Just get everything set up, and then this way we start going. Now when I put Mothra on here, I think I might have to Dremel out some of its tail, so it kind of like locks into place and covers up as much as I can. This is the kind of the best option I got for now, but it should work out pretty well. So let me just make sure. Yeah, that's pretty much the best way I'm going to come up with this. So let me get this glued in, and we'll start mixing some A's and slapping it in. Okay, so what I did is I put the eaves on here and then I close it up, just for now. I'm going to Dremel it back out, but for right now this is going to be easier. So I mixed up a batch of freeform air, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the freeform air on there, I'm going to put wax paper on it, and I'm going to go into the garage and press it down. So this way, this part will be able to support that rod once I re-drill it and I set it all up. But for right now, I need to get something in here. So this is kind of the best way of doing this. So basically, just take the freeform air, take this, and I'm going to go in the garage and flatten it, let it cure up for the day, and then tomorrow I could come up and Dremel and do everything I need to do. Okay, so it's the next day. What I did is I went and Dremeled out the hole, and you can see the batch of freeform air that went around here. And then what it did is the eaves was soft, and so as the freeform air sort of expanded, it kind of pushed the eaves up a little bit through the hole. But what I did is the reason why I did the eaves around there is it gives a little bit more bonding than the freeform air, and we'll get to that in a little bit later. But at least now we have a setup for a key. So right here, this is the next day. This is all cured up. So I have to do all this detailing here and everything. But before we do all that, what I want to do is I want to get this set up over here. Now this key, I realize, is a little too long. I would like to shorten it, so I do have my Dremel tool with a little cut wheel. So I'm going to cut off a little bit here, and then I'm going to sand this all down again, get this all nice and cleaned up. And then from there, I have to get a hollow brass rod. This is just one of a smaller piece, but I'm going to get a longer one. And then we're going to create the keyhole here, so this way Godzilla goes in and out of the basin locked up. Now, one of the things is you can see that the key might show a little bit here. Once I get this in here, like my friend, when he gets this back and build it on, what he could do is he can sort of fill up a little bit of dirt around here and hide this, or say if he's doing a scenery and he wants to put some like grass or bushes or trees, so you can hide all this stuff later. But for right now, I'm just kind of getting this all set up for him so he can take it to the next level. So if you're into Godzilla stuff and you want to add, like, you know, broken trees, maybe cars, or, you know, all kinds of stuff, you can take this thing to a whole different level. But we just want to make sure that he goes into the base and he's locked in, and Mothra is locked into there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this key set up. I'm going to get this cut up and cleaned up. We're going to work on this key. And then once this is done, then I'm going to work on Mothra and get in. Because what it is if I'm trying to put Mothra in and he's wandering around and moving and it's going to be a pain in the ass. I'd rather have him locked into the base first and then this way it's kind of locked and not moving on me, and then I can work Mothra up there, and then we can start working on the wings, and then I can start detailing everything up. So let me get this set up and everything. It's just, one thing is, doing key stock like this works great, but sometimes if it is too long, like this is way too long, I'm going to cut off probably like a 1/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch right here, and then that should go into the base better. But having a long key trying to get in there sometimes is a pain. Something a little bit smaller will work better. So let's get that cut, and then we'll get that set up, and I can walk away from this from the day and come back tomorrow and start working on the rest. Okay, so I went ahead and I got my brass rod in there, and you see this is kind of how this is going to connect. Now you can see it's a little bit longer than the piece, and I'll show you the reason why I do this. So what I'm going to go over to the vice grip, and then what I like to do is I like to crush the end of it. Don't put it in all the way to where you would hit the metal, just down at the bottom area, just enough underneath of it. Make sure you're not crushing to the metal. And then you just kind of crush this down. And I'll show you why I do this in a second. But see how that piece sort of is crushed down there now? And then this piece locks into place. So what happens is we're going to go into the studio. And then what I'm going to do is I put glue down there. And then basically it locks it into place. Yeah, let's get into the studio and I'll show a little bit better. Alright, we'll just do it over here. It's a little bit easier, so this way a lot of the fumes will go away. So, if you have your hollow brass rod, right, and you leave it open at the bottom, what happens is if you put a bunch of glue down there to lock this in place, if you're not careful, if you put too much glue, it'll actually go into the brass rod and it'll hit that metal piece. So then when you try to pop this out, it locks everything into place. By crimping the bottom of the edge, it's going to bond there and it won't go inside the hollow brass tube up to there. So that's what helps me from, locking everything into place. So in this step, just get your Insta-Set ready. Get your gel glue or whatever glue you want to use. And then what I like to do is I just put a bunch down at the bottom, as much as I can, but not too much. You don't need enough in there to go super crazy and, you don't want to put this piece in here and all of a sudden all that glue comes seaming up top and it locks everything into place. Just enough in the bottom that'll get over this area here and it locks it. So what I also like to do is grab some of the Insta-Set and put it around the brass rod. Just get that set up. And then what we do is we take Godzilla and the rod and we put it into place like so. Wherever we need to set it up. Now, looking at it, it looks like there needs to be a little bit more glue, but I'm going to walk away from this. I mean, you need the Insta-Set to dry up. You can't, if you take your bottle of glue right now and you try to squeeze some more in there, that Insta-Set fume still could come into your bottle and kind of clog and lock everything up. So you don't want to do that. So I'm just going to let that sit for right now. It's pretty much in a good position. It's pretty much almost locked into place as it is, but it needs to be a little bit more. So, we're going to let that sit, get that all set up, and then what will happen is later today, whenever I work on some other pieces and have a little extra A's, or if I mix out some A's, I'll shove A's in there for the day, and it'll lock it into place, and then I'll be able to lift him in and out, and I'll have a key, and he'll be set. So there, now my friend will have to do is maybe he could put some other stuff around these areas and stuff and everything, and get him locked into place, because there's really no setup for Godzilla on here, at least from what I can tell. I mean, there might be some spots over here for it, but it just didn't look right. So basically, you kind of go wherever you want. It should work out pretty well. So let's kind of get a little bit of a look in here, see how it is. It's pretty much starting to lock into place, but it's not quite there. So like I said, I'm going to walk away from this. I'll come back. I'll hit it with a little bit more glue later, and then once I'm ready to work on the next steps, we'll see what's going to happen. Alright, so it's the next day. Everything's lined up pretty good. I think I'm actually going to be able to hide this rod pretty well once I build out the tail, so we probably won't see it. It might be a little bit of a hole there, but it should be fine, only because the brass rod sticks up a little bit. So I put Mothra together. These are the wings. So as you can see, they're kind of floppy. We're going to put those rods in them later. But for right now, what I want to do is I want to get him into, or her, whatever she is, into this top part. So I made a little bit of a mark over here, a little black marker, and I'm sort of like sitting down trying to line everything up. So I want to line everything up where these wings over here don't hit this tail, but still lines up to like head to head. So I got it pretty lined up. I'm thinking that once it's in there, it'll go down just a little bit, but it should work out. Even if this tail or this wing sort of hits this tail a little bit, I think it'll be fine, because it'll look like, you know, at least it's not, you know, it's hitting, so it's kind of like connected. I mean, if you really wanted to, you can actually like Dremel this out and you can lock Mothra into there and like let it sit. But personally, I think just having it in there should work. And it's actually fairly light, that as long as you get a rod in here, I don't think any of this is going to work, because it's a really big, thick piece. And I think whoever put this together must have put a rod in there, because I hit a rod down here with the tail. So I think we should be good. It's just a matter of the wings flopping, because I think over time, my fear is these wings would start to really, really sag. So just putting those rods in there will just help it stay strong for a longer time. Otherwise, this stuff and this resin, if you hit it with a blow dryer, it'll probably just warp down. Not saying that it won't look pretty cool, but personally, you want to make it look like it's flapping its wings and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Dremel out that hole. We're going to get a hollow brass rod again, and we're going to get this in there so this goes in and out. Just got to be very careful with this right now, so I don't want to snap or anything. So I'm going to get that going. We're going to get Mothra in there. I think as what I'm doing right now, it's just this wing I need to have in, and everything else looks good. Because I was afraid that this foot and stuff might be hitting this wing if I put it down. We don't, you know, we can actually have it up a little bit too. We can have them up a little bit more than down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Dremel enough hole to figure out where I want it to go. But I'm thinking, you know, just like this or upwards could work too. You know, if I wanted to, if you wanted to go upwards. But I think more down like that looks pretty cool. I kind of like the wings covering it. But you know, I mean, you could go either or, whichever direction. But I think it'll work pretty good. I mean, if I put it this way, yeah, maybe like that a little bit. So I'm gonna, you know, let's we got two markers. Let's kind of do this real time. So he's kind of. So if I put Mothra like this, and we have a hole here, that could work. Alright, so we're going to go with this third one in the middle. I'm going to Dremel into that area. I might have to Dremel a little bit more. Once I get it to where I want it, we'll work it out. So it's going to be a little tricky. So let me get that Dremeled out, and then we'll plan this better. Alright, so we're pretty much getting to the point where we're going to get Mothra in there. So what I had to do is I had to kind of grind out some of this area at the edge a little bit, only because what happened was the rod was getting stuck here. So what I did is I had to get it so the rod goes in a little bit further. And then what I had to do is I had to kind of grind this out a little bit. This is kind of one of the first times I really actually had to bend something here. Usually when I do something like this, I always have it bent to a point where it's a straight point and I didn't have to kind of curve something out. So what happens is you lose that kind of, whenever that square rod starts to bend a little bit, you lose it. But as long as I grinded it out and I made this a little bit, it worked out pretty well. So what I also did is I made a mark here, so where as far as it goes down, so this piece goes in there pretty well, like so. It kind of locks in. Now, one thing I'm going to suggest to my friend is when he gets it, whenever he's done painting it and he's ready to go, get some like some white grease and just put a little tiny white grease on this piece, so this way when you're working on it, it slides in and out a little bit better. Because sometimes if the thing is too tight and you put it on and you try to pull out, you might snap one of these things, so you got to be careful. But as you can see, I Dremeled a hole in here and I drilled it out. And then this piece sort of goes in pretty well. I kind of like where it's positioned at the moment. Hold on, where's that hole there? So it kind of goes like that. Kind of locks in pretty place. Now, you might see a little bit of this rod underneath here, but it'll be hidden. Because once the wings are on and stuff, and you're looking at it, it's kind of, and once I fill this in a little bit more, so sadly there might be a little bit of a rod showing, but it might not be the end of the world. I mean, if I really wanted to take it and hide that, I could Dremel out some of the tail and stuff, and sort of put it around the tail, but I think it's going to look fine. So basically, I have a lot of wiggle room. See how I have a lot of wiggle room to see what I'm going to do? The next step, what I need to do, though, is see how far this rod goes in here. So let's put this, see, the rod kind of goes in pretty well. So what we do is we make our marker about, you know, probably like right about there, and then we see how far. So as you can see, this is the mark I made where the rod's going to end, and this is the mark where how deep it goes in. So what I need to do is I need to drill out a little bit more in there, just a little bit more, get some more drilled out there, so I can at least bring the rod maybe up to about there. And then what I could do is I can crimp it, I could throw a bunch of glue in there, dip this in the Instaset, and kind of position Mothra into there and let it sit, and then I should be able to pull Mothra out, fill up the hole a little bit better, start seaming all this up, and we should be good to go. But when I do that, I want to put all the wings on Mothra and kind of, hopefully I'm saying this name right. I'm not like a Godzilla fan, but whatever. So we'll be able to put Mothra in there, kind of let the glue sort of sit, have a good position, and I should be able to pull them out, start seaming everything up, and we should be good to go. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for, I think, as bending the rod. But let me get this dremelled out a little bit more. I'd rather have a fairly big hole in here to hold this and position it correctly than to try to be stingy and not do a bigger hole. And then all of a sudden when I try to put it in and glue it, it doesn't work. So what I want to do is I want to cut and crimp this rod first, put it in this rod, and then test it again. You don't want to just crimp this, try it, and go in. You want to make sure everything is going right. So let's find my pen cap. Let me Dremel this out, crimp this rod, and let's see if we can get this lined up before we put the glue in. Okay, I'll figure I'll show this. So I cut the rod and I crimped it, so it pretty much goes in and it sort of it feels like it locks into place pretty well. See how it kind of like just kind of locks in, which is good. I just got to make sure that I put this you know, little marker up top, as you can kind of see. Now you see how that, so what I did is I crimped it and then I grinded out the sides of it because it's spread apart. So see how it's like kind of open there? What happens is, if I have this in here as of now, and say I put a bunch of glue in there, and then I put Mothra down at this angle, that glue is going to seep through this right now. And that's going to be, then that might lock in here and cause a lot of problems. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to spread this a little wide open piece. I'm going to put a little bit of glue in there, just a little bit, and I'm going to crimp it in my vice grip, and I'm going to let it dry. So this way, this should actually be locked into place and be good. Because too, if you try to put Mothra in there and it grabs a wall, this stuff will spread too, and the glue goes in. The idea is we want to get this locked in there without glue getting into this hollow part. So I want to put a little glue in here and lock this into place, and I'll come back and show you once I get that. Actually, we'll just show you right now. It's not that hard. So basically, go over here. Like if you get a little too much glue on something, or you can always grind it out to do. So we'll just spread this open a little, put a little tiny glue in there, right? And then it might, you know, sort of lock into this a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. And then we'll kind of just glue that. And then I'll go grab my Instaset real quick, which I left in the other room. Make sure the Instaset doesn't slip on the bottle. Put a little Instaset in here. It might lock it. Oh, no, it worked out pretty good. Yeah. So you see, it grinded in pretty well. It's all, it's not spread apart anymore. Now there's a little glue sitting on the outside, so I'll let this dry a little bit while I Dremel out that hole and get everything ready. And then I could just grind out that little glue. If it was still wet, you could kind of take it off, which kind of did. But yeah, so that's crimped now, which is good. That's the idea. We don't want glue getting into that area. And then if you want to just double check to make sure nothing got screwed up, go back to your part. And then just double check. Locks in, no glue, and we're good. Yeah. So like I said, just doing a little bit of a white grease. I forget what the white grease is called. I used to use it for my arcade sticks when I played Street Fighter, because you know the arcade sticks, the little acculator and stuff inside needed sometimes to be greased up. So I used to use that white grease on it. You don't want to, I mean, you could use car grease if you have it. You just got to be very, very careful that if you put any of that car grease on there, that you don't get it on your fingers and you put it all over your statue. Just enough, just so it doesn't like rust on you and it doesn't like, you know, lock into place. But again, I only say that because when you're painting it and you're putting it together back and forth and stuff and everything, it's a little easier to have a little tiny grease there to help it, only because the rod is fairly long. If the rod was a little bit shorter for doing this, I would suggest not doing it, but it'll help it in the long run. And then, you know, like if you leave it on your shelf for a few years or whatever and you need to break it down, that grease will help pop it out too a little bit. One thing I'm going to suggest my friend too real quick is he probably should just add some magnets onto these, you know, maybe add like some tiny little magnets in there, only because it'll probably make life a little bit easier when you break it down. But we have to do all that wiring first though. But let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead. This should be pretty much ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and sort of Dremel this up a little bit more, make sure everything's a little bit maneuverable. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get Mothra attached to that rod and see how it works. Alright, so Dremeled out, pretty much got it to where I want it. We got a little bit of a play. I might have to grind out. No, I think we're looking pretty good. I think this is good. Because if you, it's kind of hard from on camera, but if you're looking from here, you see Mothra's coming over Godzilla. It looks pretty good. So if I try to go up a little, you could go down at an angle if you wanted to, but it's not hitting anything, and we're looking pretty good. I'm just double checking real quick, just making sure everything is looking decent. Yeah, like I said, there is a little bit of a rod probably showing, but sadly, this is kind of where the best option I kind of came up with. I mean, I can let him sit right now, and then you can kind of see how it's looking over here, sort of. So you can kind of see how it's going over. Actually, not bad, because this way, I mean, this leaves a lot of room for stuff, you know. You can add broken trees around there, you could stuff, and you can see even just by not gluing that in yet and everything, he's pretty much supported, and you're not worried about it all. And, you know, just putting those rods in and stuff, too, over time will work. But yeah, like I said, a little bit of a rod showing. I mean, I could sort of Dremel out that tail a little bit, but you know, I mean, if you really wanted to, you can add like trees and dust and dirt or whatever and kind of hide it. That's kind of the best I'm gonna come up with, honestly. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see from here. Let me pull off the camera. You can kind of see underneath there's that little rod. Let me see. Maybe kind of blurry. See how you see a little bit of a rod under there? Like I said, I could sort of cut around the tail and push it in more. Which, not the tail, but the Mothra's butt. And that would help it go down a little bit more, but in the end, probably not worth it. Once I fill up, you'll miss the metal part, but that little brass will probably stick out a little bit. Like I said, there's probably some ways, or maybe some Godzilla type theme stuff that'll kind of hide that a little bit more, which I think won't be a bad idea. But in the end, I mean, that's kind of like, you know, I'm not really sure what else to do with this. That's kind of where we're at. Let's see. I might have to let me play with it a little bit more. Let me see if I can come up with something, and then see if it works. Okay, I got it all set up now. It's going to be hidden pretty well, as best as I possibly can get it. I had to sort of chop out the tail a bit of Mothra, but I think this is a really good position. I like the way it's looking. It's actually, the way it's positioned right now, it's like Godzilla's hitting the ground, but at least he's coming up to like sort of swat the face. So I think I got it in a really good spot. The tail and everything is up over here. It's not hitting any of that. So we're looking pretty good. So I'm going to pop off the wings real quick. I'll show you guys exactly what I Dremeled out. And then we're going to glue this rod into Mothra. Right, Mothra. Or we're going to call him Mothra, whatever the hell her name is. Alright. Make sure we don't break anything. And then once this is glued in, it's all about fine-tuning the tail again, getting it all cleaned up, and then what we have to do is we have to fine-tune the back of Mothra's butt and everything. So what I did is I dremelled out this little notch over here, and I did a little bit of a larger rod in there. So what I'm going to do next is get this all cleaned up, get as much dust out of here as possible. I'm going to glue as much glue in there as I can. We're going to get the Insta-Set on there, and I'm going to put this in there. We're going to get that locked, and if all goes well, we should be able to pop Mothra out of there, and we'll have a removable part. And we're looking pretty good. Yeah. So after this, you know, once we get all this seamed up and we get the tail seamed up, we'll work on the wings. But for right now, I just need to keep this one back wing over there. The rest of the wings we could put aside. And then I'll just have to set aside some time later today just to get on YouTube, play some music, and just sit in the studio and just kind of rebuild all this tail and everything. And then once this is rebuilt, we can work on Mothra's tail kind of seaming into here and locking into place. And then we work on the wings. A little bit tricky, but we're getting there. It's one of those things where I understand they sculpted this, but they should have engineered it in a way where the Mothra does lock into the tail, or there's some kind of tree holding it up. It's kind of weird to sculpt an item, but not have a way of the character flying above Godzilla. It's a little strange to me, but then again, I don't know the characters too well, so I don't know the whole idea about it. Maybe it's just something where you have to figure out on your own and create a whole sort of scene. I'm not really sure. I'm not into the, you know, Godzilla monster type stuff of the hobby, so I'm just pretty much engineering it so it looks like they're all together fighting. So let's go ahead and get this set up and cleaned up, ready for glue. We'll do that. And then hopefully later today I can start sculpting. Now one thing I am down to, this is my last bottle of glue. So I think I'm going to be using the whole entire rest of this bottle in there. And then if I need some glue for some other kits, I got to run to the hobby store either today or tomorrow, because the glue I ordered is not coming in for about 4 days. So I completely forgot that was my last tube. But there's definitely enough in there for what we need to do. Alright, so a little bit of a change of plans. Got everything set up. You know, in the beginning it was like, okay, just get Mothra up there, make it look good, do your thing, blah, blah, blah. So after I sent pictures and everything, he decided to say, I needed to be a certain width and depth. And I was like, well, I should have learned that in the beginning, otherwise I could have planned it better. But sadly, now we got to change it up. So the idea is to hopefully not have it too deep. So I guess what we're going to do is I'm going to have to rebuild all this now after I dremelled all that out. But I made a mark over here on the booty area. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dremel at an angle, and hopefully the rod, sadly this wing over here, he might have to blow dry this. Like I had this set up in a way where these rods would hold this up, but I told him now, like these wings over here might be hitting the base once I get it done, because he wants it at an angle where it's sort of, it's not as deep. It's going to be high, but it won't be as deep. So sadly, I'm going to, it's just the wingspan is so damn wide. That's the problem. So he's just going to have to do it where I might just be like this wingway here. I think what's going to happen is, now that I think about this more, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put everything together. I'm going to fine tune the tail and everything. And I'm going to let him come and take it. I'm going to let him put it in his case and see how it looks. If he says, okay, well, this wing needs to be curled down, or it needs to be bent a little bit, or whatever, what I'll do is I'll have him sort of warp it with a blow dryer, bring it back to me, and then I can curl a rod on it and do it that way. But me trying to do this without like all this information I didn't have in the beginning, it's becoming a little bit of a pain. So he wants it to be where it's not as wide. So if I do it this way, I think he'll be able to have it, and I think that's probably the way it's going to go. So now I'm going to dremel into the booty. I'm going to get a nice hole going in this way, and then we'll see if we can get this in there, which I'm hoping is, see, the problem is I can't bend this now that it's in here. That's the problem. And, you know, I left this open in case I had to redo this, just because if I couldn't position it correctly or something, but I didn't know this information in the beginning. So it's a little frustrating. If you guys are ever asking someone to do a kit, get all the details in the beginning. This is what I usually try and do with all my customs. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. I'm going to have to bitch him out when I see him in person, just for fun. But yeah, I'm going to have to Dremel that out, and it's going to look like this now at an angle. So let me get this Dremeled out, and then hopefully this will be repositioned. Alright, so went ahead and gutted out this inside. It's a mess right now. Sadly, there's nothing I can do about it. I got to get this set up. So I'm going to, so we have to take a couple extra steps. So basically what I had to do is I had to keep drilling it in and out. So this way, Mothra is sort of at an angle so he could fit in. Now, if something happens where it is too wide, I told him, I said, what we could do is I can, move, Godzilla up a little bit. I would have to take out this key, make another key up here and move him up. But he will have to go ahead and create some kind of thing where Godzilla looks like he's actually in the dirt. I'm not going that far with the kit right now. I'm a little bit too worried about getting Mothra up on there. So, now that I gutted it all out, we pose a problem. I can't just sit here and throw a little bit of glue and set that in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some Aves, and I'm going to fill in a lot of this as much as I can. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to... maybe get a different rod or something. I'm not really sure. Sort of kind of put this in there at the correct angle, pop it out, and then sort of kind of create another fresh hole, but wide enough where I can throw the glue in. I don't want to put Aves in here and then put this in and let it sit and see how it kind of... I have so much room where it might fall and it's kind of wobbly. I need to create another hole that I can glue. Sadly, that's what I got to do. So I'm going to mix up some Aves. I'm going to shove a whole bunch of Aves back in there when I Dremeled all that out. Then what I'll do is I'll work out the gluing in the key tomorrow. And then from there, we're going to have to do some rebuilding. So I got to rebuild all this that I chopped out around here. But, you know, it is what it is. I'll do the best I can to match it as best as I can. We'll see what I can pop out. And then after that, we'll go from there. If I feel that I have to move the kit up forward to give it like somewhat of a space that it's not too far back here, I'll do it. So we're just doing a little bit extra steps. So it's a little bit frustrating, but we'll get it done. It's something, you know what it is I'm going to put some Aves in this and walk away from the day. Sometimes you do something, it doesn't work out, or you got to change it up. Instead of getting frustrated and screwing something up, I'm going to walk away. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill this in with some Aves. We're going to work out the correct angle, at least a little bit. I'll use like, you know, some kind of a tool just to kind of create that hole again. And in this way, what I could do is once the Aves is cured up, tomorrow I can take the Dremel or the drill and drill the correct hole at the correct angle. And then from there, I'll be able to get this glued in, and then I can start rebuilding everything. So let's go ahead and mix up some Aves and get that set up. Okay, so what I did is I packed all Aves in there. I mean, I really packed Aves in there to the point it was squeezing that over here because I hit this hole, so we worked out pretty well. So what I did is, there's a little bit of a square, it's kind of hard to see. I went ahead and I sort of positioned this again. So what's going to happen is tomorrow, once it's all cured up, I'll grab my drill. I'll have the main hole that I need to really work on, and I'll Dremel and I'll drill into this hole, and I'll create another channel. So once that channel is set up, I can throw glue in there and I can actually position him a little bit better. Because right now, it's so opened in here that if I try to set this in and let it sit with Aves or whatever, and I try to glue, it'd be a nightmare. We need to have a basic channel where I could throw glue and lock that into place. So right now, this is pretty much set up the way it is. We're going to leave this alone. I'm not looking at this for the rest of the day. I need to move on to other stuff. And then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll get this sort of set up like we were going to try to do today. And then after that, it's rebuilding. But like I said, if I need to shift him up over, we can do that another day. Not really worried about that. It's pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and just let this set up and walk away for today. Alright, moment of truth. We're going to get this locked into place now. So what I did is I put some silly putty around here, only because if by chance I put too much glue in Mothra, when I squeeze it on and any of it comes out, I don't want it locking into that piece of metal. I don't care if the silly putty gets in with the glue, or if there's any type of glue that gets around anywhere. That's all going to be rebuilt anyway at this point. So I don't really care. I just don't want to put Mothra on there and all of a sudden it locks onto that metal, and then when I try to pop it out, it becomes impossible. So I'm just being careful. Just got my new glue bottles in the mail. Ordered a pack of 5 off of eBay. So if you're ever looking for gel glue, just go on eBay or whatever. Get a pack of 5. Find the cheapest person out there, and it works out pretty well. So I'm going to try to put as much glue in there as I possibly can with not overfilling it. Then I'm going to squeeze some of my Instaset onto the piece of metal. And then I'm going to put Mothra on there, and hopefully we'll lock into place pretty well. And then whatever happens, we'll see how it goes. Now, there's a little tiny red eaves on top of this piece. What happened was, yesterday when I was working on some stuff, I did a quick test on this again, and I drilled out this hole in the butt area here. And what happened was this piece was sort of like hitting it. So what I did is I grinded it off, but I didn't have enough space to glue it back together. So what I did is I just put a little piece of Aves on there, and it locks in. So now this piece is pretty much set up without getting any glue in there. So basically at this point, get your bottle of glue, brand new. I'm leaving the wings on because it's easier to position where I need to. I just don't need that one wing. And then basically I'm going to squeeze a lot of glue at the bottom. I think we're looking pretty good there. Not really sure. Actually, you know what? Just to be on the tip, we gotta move a little bit fast though. Just to be on the safe side, let's grab a piece of wood. Because sometimes I just realized, you know, I might not be getting here, so I just split a piece of wood. And let's see if, yeah, get it down there a little bit more. That's not enough. Grab the other piece of wood that I just split in half. Make sure we're getting in there. I'll squeeze a little bit more glue. Okay, I think that's good. We got a lot in there. Okay, now take our glue, put that aside. Get our Instaset. Get this set up over here, and then we get a bunch of this Instaset on here. Put this over there so we don't spill it, and then we grab the moth and we put this into the hole and then get it lined up to where we need it. That's pretty much where we're going to line it up. Now, like I said, if by chance I need to move it up or whatever, there we go, right about there. Yep, right there. Now we'll grab some of this Instaset and we'll see if we can kind of got to kind of hold it a bit, and we should be locked into place pretty well soon. Takes a little time, only because we put a lot of glue in there. If it was just like a little dab of glue and you hit it with the Instaset, it'll lock into place. But since we threw a lot of glue in there, and we put the Instaset around that rod, sometimes like in the inside that glue is still a little bit set up in there. So like if I let go, sort of almost there. So sometimes you just gotta hold it. But at least with that Instaset on the metal rod and pushed in there, the fumes just kind of gotta go around and stuff and get in there, and it'll lock into place pretty well. And I'm not worried about any of the whatchamacallit, any of the Instaset going down or falling anywhere. Like if this was painted up, sometimes Instaset could leave a little stain on your paints depending on what kind of paint you did. And like how much Instaset sat on it, but since we haven't even primed this up, the Instaset will go away and everything, and we should be pretty good. So what I'm going to do, kind of at a good position now. Let's see if it pops out a little bit. Okay, so the rod is there, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some Instaset down this way. and it should lock into place pretty well. So now we have a little bit of an opening in here. It's kind of hard to see, but what I'll do is now I can throw a bunch of eaves in there as best as I can, and then that'll pretty much lock that into place pretty well. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this down. We're going to take this off. I'm going to throw that silly putty out because it's super old. And I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to let this set up a bit, let this dry. Before we start playing with it and stuff, what we'll do is I'll take off the wings so they don't snap. And I'm just going to walk away. I'm going to go get lunch. I'll come back later, make sure everything is set up. And then when I mix up some eaves a little bit later tonight, while I'm either live streaming or whatever, I'll throw a bunch of eaves in there. And then after that, we got to start building this all back up. Now, like I said, after this is done and everything's going, if my friend feels that he wants the character set up a little bit forward, what I can do is I can Dremel this out, Dremel another hole, make another key and stuff, but then he's going to have to work out the base and do grass or whatever on his end and stuff. But other than that, I think we got everything set up. So, alright, we're going to let that sit. I'm going to go grab some lunch, and then we'll see the next steps when I come back to this. Okay, so I'm just doing a test right now just to make sure everything's good. I took some pictures and I sent it to my friend. If he wants anything changed, I'm going to have to slap the hell out of him over this. Because as of right now, I think that's as far as I'm going with the position of the moth connected to Godzilla. It's about 20 inches deep now, going from the back of the wing to the front of the wing about. If I was to throw Mothra up more at an angle, which I really can't do because of the way the rod is in there and the tail, that would have had to been done in the beginning, but this is as far as I can go now. The only thing I could do right now is if he wants me to, I can actually, like I said, I can take Godzilla out, re-peg him, and move him up and position him a little bit different. It all depends on if he wants me to or not, if this is good or not. But as of right now, I think it looks pretty decent. You know, it works pretty well. It's got a nice, good little fight scene going, and everything's removable right now. The only thing I have to do, you know, before we add the rods to the wings and we start seaming everything up is just making sure he's okay with the position and all that stuff. So, like I said, if he wants me to move it up, I can. But the only issue is Godzilla might not be flat on the base, so he's going to have to take the initiative to throw some, like, freeform air under Godzilla or some eaves or grass or something and make it, you know, a little bit more flat. Because the base, like I said, the base doesn't have, like, an actual spot for Godzilla. If it does, I really couldn't find it. But I think right now it's looking pretty decent. So, yeah, well, I took some pictures I sent to him. We'll see what he says. If I come back and I start seaming everything up, he's okay with the position. If he's not okay with the position, he wants it moved up, I'm going to have to bitch while I reposition everything. But we'll get it done one way or the other. Okay, so it's time to rebuild the tail. I don't need that much A's because it's kind of only just got to do a little bit of the curve on it because I filled it all in with regular Aves. So I have an Aves epoxy sculpt, which is red. And the reason why I use red is because I can see the red color over my gray primer. And you can see the red over here. But I also have Aves Fix-It Sculpt, which is just a regular natural white, I guess, whatever it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make equal amounts of the red Aves Epoxy Sculpt and to fix it. What it does, it gives me like a pink color. And it gives me like the perfect consistency where it's not too soft like Aves, but it's not as tough as Fix-It Sculpt. It's kind of like that in between. And it just helps me the sculpt a little bit better because this tail sort of has some lines that were here, but they really weren't, and it's like the texture on this is going to be kind of hard to mimic 100%, but I'm going to come as close as I possibly can, and by mixing up that sort of equal amounts kind of gives it to me. So I just got to get some of my Aves Safety Solvent some more back in this bottle, mix this up, and then I'm just going to sit down, throw on some music, and kind of rebuild the tail. Alright, so went ahead and I pretty much rebuilt the tail. What happens is, because it was cut down there, you have sort of a sharp edge going down. So if you try to take the eaves and you match that little sharp edge, what happens is sometimes the eaves gets pushed down there and you get that little sharp kind of popping out. So what I did was I put some of the eaves on top of that edge around it and I built it around and I went from there. That's the best way to kind of make it nice and even and go from there. Now, I'm trying to match up the texture and sort of the way the tail is, but sadly, it's not really, I mean, there is a nice good detail, but there also is some kind of stuff that's not really there. So I'm doing the best I possibly can. So I still got a little bit more to go. I just got a little bit of like hatch marks to do like around these areas here. What it is this brush right here is fairly old and it's kind of like caked up, so it's really stiff. So that kind of helps me kind of go in here and sort of like push the eaves around, create little like divots and little texture and go from there. So it's just a matter of just kind of keep playing with it and going from there and letting it kind of cake up and stuff. But yeah, so like there's a couple like lines like kind of like around here type thing. So and once I prime it up though, and I prime it, it kind of comes together. It'll look pretty good. So it's just a matter of kind of just adding little tiny lines. Before I drilled it, I really looked at the texture a lot, and it really wasn't that much there. All your detail is over here. You know, this is kind of where all the detail is. Over here really wasn't that crazy. So this should look pretty good because Mothra's going to kind of cover up a lot of that. Then once this is on the base, if my friend adds like maybe some trees or stuff to cover around here, you're not really going to see much of it. And that's kind of like a better idea, so this should work out pretty well. So I'm just going to kind of hit this up a little bit more here and there. Kind of like, there's like little divots and stuff, but it really, like I said, before I dremeled it out, there really wasn't that much detail. I mean, there was, but nothing like this. Like, this type of detail would be a hell of a nightmare to rebuild, but the way it was flat under here, it's pretty much straightforward. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, so that's rebuilding the tail. We'll let this set aside. And then we can build Mothra's ass going into the tail here. That's where a lot of more detail has to go. I want this to cure up pretty well. And then once that's Mothra's ass is filled out, then I could go back and go ahead and do some the rods on the wings. Alright, so I'm working on something right now, and I have this little chunk of extra A's, and it's actually fairly soft. I accidentally mixed up too much for the item I'm working on. So while that item is sort of being set up till it hardens to where I can start detailing it, I figured I'd use this for in here. So if you have some A's and it's fairly soft, gotta be very careful with these feet. So you can kind of see it needs to be locked into there. So basically what I'm just going to be doing is I'm just going to take some of the A's with my safety solvent. Just kind of get this soft. Get soft to the point where it's like really fresh chewing gum. And then basically from there, just start pushing it into here. You want to make sure that whatever you push in, you don't push into the hollow brass rod, of course, because you don't want to lock all that up in place. So whatever kind of tool you got, you can kind of just start putting this in here and locking this into place even better than what it was. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to get this all set up. And then once I'm ready to get back on the Godzilla, we'll get his tail all seamed up. And then once the tail is seamed up, that's when we'll do all this. I don't want to try to do any detailing or rebuilding some of this stuff now because he goes into the tail and there might be sort of a little bit of a curve going around the tail with this just to help lock it into place. So right now I just want to get this locked in there. So I'm going to do this off of camera only because it's kind of hard to show it in camera while trying to look into it at the same time. So that's all I'm going to really do. So this will be all pretty much ready and set up to go and everything. So that's where we're at with that. And that's pretty much it for just kind of really locking that brass rod into there. But like I said, always make sure you don't put any of that A's into there or any kind of residue, because then it'll become a nightmare to try to get that in there because something might get clogged or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to add in magnets for my friend. So there's a couple ways of doing this. If you have small magnets and you want to put like a small magnet here and here, these are actually pour spouts, so they're not actually markers for magnets. These are pour spouts. But if you wanted to add a magnet there and there, or just one magnet, and put in the magnets, you can do that. And the only problem is there's not a lot of meat between these two. So I did this mistake when I first got into the hobby, and it was a hard lesson learned, and I had to Dremel everything back out. So I'm always careful of where my magnets go, because say you put a magnet in here, right, and you magnetize it so this wing is okay, you know, and everything fits in there. But say you're not paying attention, and you put this magnet over in here, right, and you have the polarity going this way, but say you screw up on this one, right, and you forgot to say, oh crap, I put the wrong magnet in, and when you push it in, the magnet's popping out. So instead of trying to add magnet here, magnet here, magnet here, magnet here, this is your key stock. This is basically a square metal key stock. This is zinc plated, but it is magnetizable with magnets. So instead of sitting here trying to add a magnet in here, what I'm doing is I'm just going to Dremel out some holes, what I did already, right? I already jumbled out a little hole. I'm going to cut this key stock. I'm going to put that in there. And then all I have to really worry about is putting a magnet in here and putting a magnet in here going in the correct direction. Because there's like only this much meat between that little wall there and that wall there. So you always got to be careful of going in directions. And the other thing too is if you have a statue too and you say there's a head coming in here and you put a magnet in this direction and then you got a magnet here, but say they're really strong magnets, you can have a little bit of a reaction going in different ways and the piece doesn't really want to stay in. So I'm always mindful of where sometimes just putting a piece of metal that's magnetizable in here, but putting a good magnet in here will help it stay. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Now, to give you guys an idea on how to Dremel this out, this right here is my go-to tool for everything I do on Dremeling. It is a tile bit cutter, and you can kind of see all those little grooves in there. When you buy a brand new one of these, right, the teeth are very, very sharp. And if you're not careful with a piece of resin like this, if you're not holding it correctly and you're used to Dremeling, this thing will cut right through it. And you can actually go boom right through this piece and chop this all off. So if you do get a new one and you're a little bit hesitant and you don't do as much kit building as I do, because I'm always kit building every day and I'm using this Dremel tool literally every day for at least 2 hours. That's how much work I do with this. If you get a new bit, once it actually starts to wear down a little bit and you don't have those teeth grabbing you, it's easier to maneuver and it grinds out resin pretty easy. So if you get a brand new one and you feel like, oh, you know what, it's going to be ages before I ever really fine tune it, you can actually grind it on a piece of metal. So see right here, there's a couple little markings right here. So what you do is you can hit this and go right down on a piece of metal, and you can sort of take down the teeth a bit to the point where it's not grabbing. Because right now I'm actually pulling my fingers across it and it's not grabbing it like brand new. But a brand new one, I'm telling you, if you're not careful, it'll go right through resin and it'll come right into your finger too if you're not really careful with it. So, but this is the tool I use for just about everything I do for kit building. Tile bit cutting tool. It's the best tool that'll take out resin like you wouldn't believe. But so I'll show you right now in real time. So this is my shop vac. I always put it on my vice grip because I always like to suck in as much resin dust as I possibly can. And always making sure not to breathe in as much as I can. So I'm going to kick this on. It's going to be a little bit loud. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go right in there with the tool and I'm going to grind out a little notch in here. It's not that hard. I'm going to try to have the camera in the way. Normally I don't have the camera in the way. But just kick this on. And you got a little bit of a notch. Now, like say you did a little bit too close to this and you actually pop that out, you can, you know, when I put this piece in here with some Aves, because I do have that fresh Aves, well, not fresh, I kind of mixed up a little while ago, but I want to utilize as fast as I can. So I'm going to put a little bit of Aves in there, and then I'm going to cut this, you know, just use your regular metal hacksaw. I'm going to take out this piece, put this here, and cut these out. And then you put in there. So if you grinded this little piece out, you can put Aves and let it sit up, and then the next day you can just sand it down and you're perfectly good to go. And then this way you'll have a nice piece to do it. Now, one last thing too, when you buy this key stock, because I get this at a Tractor Supply Company down the road from me. So if you don't have one near you, you can order these on eBay or you can order them on Amazon. It's called key stock. Like, if you guys know what key stock is, there is a piece of square metal in all your door handles for your house. And there's a piece of square in there that helps turn a knob. So if you're ever getting rid of your door handles or you're changing your locks, open them up and take out the piece of metal and you'll get the square key stock. But some are zinc and some are steel. This is zinc plated, and you can see it's not magnetized to this, right? So this one is not magnetized. I do have ones that are magnetized that'll, so always make sure you test your magnets to make sure you got one that's magnetized. Nothing sucks more than getting one, putting it in there, and realize you don't do it. I do use these that are not magnetized for the bottom of feet that go into bases to lock them in like Bowen Design statues. So I do have a couple that are just regular zinc and they're not steel. But I am going to go grab my steel one, which I think is this one right here. And as you can see, so that one magnetizes, this one doesn't. So always make sure you get the right ones if you're using magnets. Zinc plated, but you got to make sure they're steel based. But then there's also just pure zinc that aren't magnetized, so you can see the difference. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and finish out these pieces. We'll go into the other room and I'll show you just putting a little Aves in there and locking these into places. And I'm just going to cut down 4 little pieces off of this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I probably have one over on the thing. I can maybe make the 4th. You really don't need that much, just a little bit in there, and it should work out pretty well. So that's pretty much how I get these set up for now. And then after those are set up and they're locked into place, we can work the magnets inside the body too, and also fix up the butt on the piece as well. Okay, so what I did off camera is I went around and I dremelled out this piece, and of course I figured I was going to hit a little bit of spots. You can kind of see that they didn't line it up perfect compared to here. So there is going to be a little bit of issuing, you know, like stuff. So it wasn't lined up perfect. But what I did is I dremelled this out. I have some rods here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the rod sort of where it goes to there. I'm going to use a little bit of glue. And then what I'll do is I'll take some Aves and I'll put Aves around the edge. Now, it might be just a tiny bit thicker than what's here. But in the long run, once the Aves is there and the rod's there, we don't have to worry about any warping. Over in here, we don't have to go too far down there, just like into there, and that'll be, actually, I'm going to go in a little bit further, because now that I see that there's a piece here, so I'm going to Dremel in a little bit more, and we're going to have a nice rod here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing probably on this one here, or this one, probably this one right here, and get another rod going there. And then that should pretty much help it from warping over time, because it's very, very soft, it's very thin, and honestly it's a good thing I'm doing this just before the winter, so it's not too cold and it's not actually hot. We're kind of in the fall weather. So if this was actually in the summertime and I left this in here, I have a funny feeling that this would, like, within the heat, this would start to sag down. I know it would, because I can tell by the resin. But we want to make sure that once it's in the wing, we don't have to worry about this flopping down over time. Because even if you're in a controlled house, whether it's hot, cold, whatever, and it's always like, you know, a nice controlled environment, this still feels like this will sag on me. It's just, I got that gut feeling on it. But, so, I'm going to Dremel this one out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to Dremel this one out too. So the idea is, I'm going to do this one first and this one first. Let this cure up tonight. And then what I'll do is I'll come back and do it over here. Because I have a funny feeling that if I try and Dremel this out here, and then I try to Dremel this out here, and I'm kind of handling it and messing with it, I can actually snap it and break it off. So we'll just do one at a time just to be on the safe side. So the next step is I went and picked up these rods this morning, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of bend this rod into here, and I'm going to get this in here nice and good. Now I could use a steel rod, but the problem with the steel is it's very hard to kind of bend it and keep it in shape. The brass rods will work a little bit better. And like I said, once you put the brass rod in there and you throw aves around the edge and you clean it up and you sand it and prime it, it'll, like, the aves being hard and the rod being there will really help it in the long run. So let me Dremel this out a little bit more. Let me Dremel that one out. We're going to bend them. I'll bring them into the studio. We'll put a little bit of glue. We'll get the rod in and we'll mix up some aves and we'll just put aves around the edge. Let it cure up, sand it down the next day, and then do the other ones. And then after that, I just got to add the magnet into Mothra's body for the wings, and we're good to go. Okay, so I got both rods set up. Now, it was a little bit difficult to get them sort of bent in perfect, only because the wings are sort of not, you know, like curved perfectly. They got sort of kind of warping. So this one worked out pretty good, but the other one over there was kind of a pain in the ass. So what I actually did is I pulled out my heat gun and I sort of melted the metal rod to make it more like bendable. So I got it to where I'm going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line of glue, BSI gel glue going down here. And then I'm going to use my Insta and lock it into place. That'll help lock it in. And then after that, once the Insta set sort of kind of goes away, I'm going to mix up some aves and then I'll just go ahead and rebuild everything and sort of go from there. It's going to be, it should, you know, it's not going to be super perfectly thin like the other ones, but in the long run it's going to make this way more durable, and that's kind of the goal. And I know I keep saying that, but I really want to make sure this one kind of fit in pretty well, so I'm pretty happy with that. It's a little bit off, but once you put that glue in there and lock it into place and throw the aves on there, it'll come out. So put this aside, and basically this is going to get a little bit messy. I might get some glue on my fingers, but it's not the end of the world. So just put a nice good line of glue going across. Always use gel glue, because gel glue makes less of a mess. It doesn't bleed all over the place, and it just stays where you put it. Okay, so kind of lock that in there. And what we'll do is we'll grab some paper towel, sort of get it stuck all over my fingers. And then we'll grab some Insta-Set. And that lines up pretty well. Alright, let's go ahead. Let's get the next one going. I figured I was going to get glue all over my fingers, but it's going to be kind of a messy day anyway with doing stuff. So I'm going to put this aside, and I'm going to let this sort of get dried up, because I don't want to mix up some aves yet and throw it on there, only because that Insta-Set sometimes really, it doesn't really mess with the aves, but it does cause sort of a problem once in a while. Make sure we're lining up pretty good on this one. Same thing, make sure there's no Insta-Set in the way. I'm just going to tell my friend once I prime it up and I kind of put the aves on there and I kind of clean it up, he's going to have to sort of just go over it on his own a little bit and make sure, like, you know, just make sure things are looking pretty good. Yeah, I'm going to have to do a nice acetone on my fingers after this. Alright, let's grab some Insta-Set on here. Lock this into place. And what we'll do is turn this over here. See, with a steel rod, it'd be very hard to do this, because over time the brass will sort of just like lock into place and stay there, whereas steel will kind of want to go back to where it was. But yeah, okay. So that is locked up pretty well right there. So, like I said, we're gonna let this sit. So it's not that bad. Like I got a good rod in there. So like I said, I'll mix up aves, and what I'll do is I'll put aves around this, and I'll kind of just squeeze it around and kind of clean it up, and then like once it's cured up, kind of go from there and sand it down a little bit, clean it up and prime it, and then once that's all done, we'll work on the next one over here, which I'm going to try to see if I can find a little bit of a thinner rod. I don't have any. I'll have to go to the hobby store and get a bit of a thinner one,
and I think a thinner one right here would work out well on there. The smaller wings in the back are durable. We don't need to do rods on those. It was these that really kind of want to sag. But I think the smaller one should be fine. But these right here are, so I'm going to kind of go in the garage right now and get some acetone and get this glue off. But we're going to put this on the floor, let this kind of set aside, and then I'll come back a little bit later, probably after lunch or whatever. It's like 11:30 now, and then start kind of working on the seam with the AU. Because I really want to get this set up today, so this way I can do the next one tomorrow.
Okay, so it's the next day, and what I've been doing is I've just been going along this piece and sanding all this up and cleaning it up. Like I said, it's a little bit thicker than these, but it's going to be underneath. It's here. Now, one of the things I probably should explain in the beginning was I did the rod underneath the wing, then it's on top of it, only because when this piece is in here, this rod is, underneath the wing and it's holding it, whereas I'm not saying it would, but if I put the rod up here and say like you were handling it or you push down by accident, the rod can go up that way. At least it's underneath the resin, so the resin is kind of holding on top of it. It's just something I always think about when I do my build-ups. Keep that in mind. Plus, it's kind of hidden under here too a little bit, so it works out pretty well. So what I'm going to do right now is, now that I sanded this up, I'm going to prime this up and I'm going to put it aside. Tomorrow I got to go hit the hobby store because I want to put a rod at least in one part of the wing over here, but I need a little bit thinner. The rod that I put up here is really thick, and the other two rods I have are pretty thick too. I want to find a little bit of a thinner one for one of the pieces under here. This way it'll work out better. But see, I can already see the difference. I mean, you guys might not be able to see the difference too much, but just by me hitting this, it's like before with the wing, this part would sort of here would bend, but now that I'm hitting this, you can see it's like pulling the whole entire character down. So at least now I know this is going to be a lot more durable and last a lot longer. So I'm going to go ahead and prime this up, put it aside, get my rod tomorrow, fix it up, and then after that we'll do those two wings, and then once we're done, just go ahead and put the magnets into the body and he's all ready to go. Okay, so I went ahead and I added magnets into the bottom part of here. So the top part, what happened is when I jumbled it out, there's a hole there. There's only like that much thickness. So what I'm doing, it's kind of a little bit of a trick. If we pop this out, so you can see what happened, it's kind of hollow. What I did is I dremelled out the magnet very top, and there's actually 2 magnets in there right now. It's kind of hard to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock them in on one side, let it cure up, and then I'm going to pull off the wing on there. So I did put in both wings, and as you can see, this sort of helps lock it in place. So the magnet is sort of sitting there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to like throw some Aves or glue in here or something and kind of lock that in. And then hopefully what will happen is I can actually go ahead and pull it out tomorrow or later today and then lock in the other side. So what I had to do is I had to slide one magnet in first and get it in there. Because what I did is I dremelled out like a circle in there. So the magnet goes in at an angle and then I can flip it up with a piece of wood or tool. And then what I did is I slipped in another magnet and it went in and it slipped in there pretty well. So even if there is sort of a layer of, here's like the magnet and there's sort of a layer of Aves on top of it, it's still going to help the magnets like lock into place and everything. So we're looking pretty good there. So there's, like I said, there's a couple ways of doing this. It's kind of hard to really try and like throw some glue in there or something right now and not have it lock in place. So I don't know, I gotta see what I'm going to try to do. Because I also have to be careful of, you know, whatchamacallit, you can't really like throw glue in there on this side and then all of a sudden this wing doesn't go in and you got to Dremel all that out. So, but as of right now I did test both wings, so I got to be careful. I just did these wires. I figure I could try to get these magnets going, but I did test it to make sure the magnets would not like, so you can kind of see they do lock in place pretty well. So there's definitely room for both magnets, and they are strong magnets. They're N52s, so they're not, I'm not really worried about them not holding over time. But if you pop that out, it's loose, and so the magnets kind of turn. So what I got to try to do is sort of pop these back into place, like so. Yeah, so I'm going to try, I could do a couple of other things too. I have to do it off camera. What I can do is I could put a piece of like tape across here, or a piece of saran wrap, and push that in there. So this way if I do put any glue in there and it accidentally hits this piece, it doesn't lock this into place, I can still pop that out. So that's probably what I'm going to do real quick. And I'm going to try to get at least one side locked in, and then I can flip it over again later today or tomorrow, locking the other part, and the magnets will be pretty good. And then once these lines cure up today, tomorrow I could sand them down, prime it all up, and I think that's pretty much it. So I just got to really work on this magnet piece. Something I got to do off camera because it's kind of hard to film it and looking in there and filming it and stuff. So once I get it in there, it should work out pretty well. Alright, so I went ahead and sanded this down and then also cleaned it up. I went ahead and primed it, but it's not completely there yet. So what happened is, when I did some of this, there's like these little tiny little notches for like of like the cape or whatever. So some of those got taken down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of like recreate them real quick. And then I can prime this up one more time and sand it down. I'm also going to use some of my putty. So I'm not going to try not to make it too much, but just kind of fill in some of these areas. Now, if you're wondering, can you use Aves over primer? You can. I've done it for years now. So priming, the reason why I use gray primer, Duplicolor Filler Gray Primer, is because it's probably the best primer for me on the market. It dries fairly fast, and I can always see what I'm doing with the red Aves on top of the gray primer. So there is let's see, just kind of, so over in here, we can throw a little bit one over in here as well, fill in this little gap, and then this will help me sort of kind of rebuild those areas that I might have sanded down, or create new ones. Like one thing I always suggest is when you're building your kits, I understand that some people feel that, oh my god, you cannot tweak it, it has to be exactly how you purchased it. There's no rule saying you have to do that. If you want to add extra stuff to your kit, if you want to add extra sculpts, if you want to add extra veins, if you want to add extra whatever, I do it all the time with my stuff. So I see no problem with going a little extra off of a kit if you feel like you want to.
there's just, you know, you want to add blood, you want to add battle damage, you want to, if you want to make Mothra battle damage and you want to add tears to the, you know, like cut in holes and make it look like Godzilla ripped some holes in the wings, go for it. You know, there's no one in the hobby or no rules in the hobby saying that you can't do that. You can do whatever the hell you want with your kit. So what I'm just doing is I'm just kind of rebuilding some of those stuff. So I'm kind of like turning it into light and seeing where some of them are. So like over here, I kind of like sanded this one down a little bit. So I'll just go over here and sort of fill this in. And then what I'll do is I'll let this dry up tonight. And then I'll, tomorrow I'll go in the garage and sand it down, prime it, sand it, tweak it, whatever I need to do. And go from there. Now what I'm not going to show on camera, but you can use putty. So there's a little spot over here. I'm going to use a little extra A's right now. But if you really didn't want to mix up A's and didn't want to go this route, you can use putty. So what I like to use is Tamiya basic gray putty. I did do it before when I sanded down. It's just gray putty stuff. And then, you know, if you grab one of these little rubber tools, you can use it like a spackle. And you can spackle in some areas. So you can just kind of go around and looking at some stuff. So I'm just kind of seeing if there's anything else I might have missed. But, so yeah, so what I'll do is I'll sand this down a little bit tomorrow. And then what I'll do is I'll hit it with some of my primer. And then I might go in with some of my putty. And just go over it one more time. Make sure I'm kind of not missing anything. You know, you just want to make sure. Oh, looks like I got a thing. But let me go ahead and do this one too, and then we can see what's going on. Okay, so kind of back onto this. So just a matter of just following the sculpt and just kind of getting it around, filling in these areas. Looking at the light though, I might need to do a little bit of putty work around this area here. I don't want to put Aves in there because Aves is a little bit harder to sand. With the putty, I can actually tweak it a little bit better. So just kind of making sure that any of these other like raised areas I kind of missed. This one looks pretty good. So on to this one. So as far as this one goes, let's see. This one didn't really have too many. One here. So we're going to fill this one in. Sort of. And then I'm going to go ahead off camera and fill up some of these other areas. Because I can't. I'm going to hit the camera. And I need to. This one's got kind of like subtle ones. Not as much. They're more up here, but not as much over here. So I might have to sort of create my own. And sort of kind of create these little things up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and do my putty work, get it all done, primed up, and then we're going to close out the video with me showing you how everything works in the garage, how it clicks in and how everything's pieced together, because all the magnets are done, everything else is pretty much set up. It's just a matter of fine-tuning this and getting it out the door. Yeah, so I just got to do some putty and just kind of create my own little take on some of this area. And it should be pretty good. Now, also what happened is because I drumbled some of this area out over here, you can see I did some of this gray putty. And I filled in some of these areas over here. So I always got to make sure that the other side is looking good too. So that's kind of a thing. So you see I did some putty work. I just didn't sand this down yet. But you can kind of see where the rod kind of went. It didn't line up correctly to this one. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So yes, let me go ahead and do this, and then we'll come back and we'll close out the video once everything's done, and we'll click it all together. Okay, let's go over it one last time, and we'll close out the video, and I'll kind of explain some stuff, what I think about the kit too after. So as you saw, we got the rod in there, and everything works out pretty well. So this pretty much clicks into here first. So if you build the kit and you start adding other elements, you just got to get used to like how you put everything together and make sure you don't add elements to where if you try to break it apart later on, you don't rip those elements out. So like I'm saying, like if you add like a tree or bushes and stuff, you want to make sure it's removable. Now, as far as this rod right here, the way this goes in, it sort of clicks in. So I'll kind of show you how that works. But before I do, I have some stuff here, which this is like white grease. It's like
See, I forget what it's called. I can't open it up right now. I don't feel like putting on a pair of gloves and stuff. But what I did is I used to use this stuff for my arcade sticks. The acculators in the stick over time start to, like, you know, the plastic versus plastic hitting each other. So you put that white grease on there and it sort of helps lubricate it and stuff. So all I did was with the Q-tip, I just put some white grease on this rod. I didn't slather it on that it would leak over time going into the item. I just put enough on there just so it doesn't like rust out or anything, and it just makes the piece sort of like easier maneuver because it felt really tight before. And I don't like using Vaseline on any of my kits. I know some guys, like my one friend who sculpts, he uses Vaseline to do sculpting with, and I hate Vaseline because if you get any of that residue on your item and you go to paint, you'll get fish eyes and stuff. And the problem with Vaseline is, like, even if there's a little residue on your desk and you actually didn't touch your desk and then you get it onto your item, it causes a nightmare. So I just put a very, very tiny bit of that white grease on there just to make sure that this goes in now. So I'm going to tell my friend not to sit there and just, like, touch this and go through it. But when you put this piece on here, I'm doing it so you can see it in the camera. So it goes on and it doesn't, like, slide in like a lot of my kits. I mean, it slides in fine, but what you need to do, you need to kind of click it into place, and then it clicks into place, kind of the way I grinded it up and stuff. So if you just put it down, it's not really locking into place, but now it locks into place like that. So we got Mothra on there pretty well. So what I did is I went ahead and just went over to any of the gunk of Aves or glue that I put in there. There was a little bit of a buildup, so I went in there with my Dremel tool, and I just sort of kind of cleaned that up. So this way the wings and everything go in pretty well. So now these go in fairly tight, but not too tight, and they also stay in with the magnets. So you put these in and they stay in pretty well. So that goes well with that. And I went ahead and I cleaned up the wings. I sanded this stuff down. The primer is a little bit wet still. I still got to go in and kind of clean up a couple spots. I'm going to do that after lunch, but I just kind of want to go ahead and put this together. So this wing goes on here like this. Trying to do this without snapping any of these feet because so far I've been okay without breaking anything. So that locks into place there pretty well. And then the last wing, which is pretty much still a little bit tacky, but we'll get this into place. So this one goes in here like so. And that goes in there like that. And we are pretty much all set up. So all in all, it was a good, you know, engineering of getting this kit together. I am not a Godzilla fan. I have never really built up any kits. I've seen a lot over the years, but personally, I feel like this kit was unfinished. Now, if you guys are Godzilla fans or you buy a lot of these kits, you can let me know if I'm wrong. But it just felt like we sculpted a base, we sculpted Godzilla, and we sculpted Mothra. You take care of the rest. You engineer it the way you want it. So it seems like it wasn't really finished, or the engineering wasn't really there. I'm not, like I said, I don't know if people build Mothra where they add a tree and they connect Mothra to the tree, or if they do a power line. Or if some people built this kit and they added it to the tail like I did. I don't know, it just feels like it wasn't finished or wasn't really engineered very well. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is how Godzilla kits are, where people just sculpt the two characters and they let the people build it and come up with their own ideas. I'm not really sure. But all in all, now we have at least a fight scene and everything is connected and engineered. So I'm pretty much done with it now. Just going to do a little bit of fine tuning with some putty work on the wings once it kind of cures up. And then I'm going to pass off to my friend and he can take it from there. I mean, from here, you know, like personally, just going off the top of my head, what I would do if I was a Godzilla fan and I was going to take this kit to the next level, what I would do is I would find trees and scale, and I would break trees and stuff. And then maybe what I would do is I would Dremel out a little roadway, you know? Like just kind of like a roadway, like this is kind of like, you know, out in the woods and there's some power lines, and then maybe find some miniature cars and put some miniature cars broken over the road and stuff. I would kind of just take it to a new level, because I don't know if this is a specific fight scene. Like there's no other elements to this, or maybe I wasn't given the elements to the kit. I don't know. All I know is my friend wanted me to just kind of engineer it so this way everything connects and it works and you can put it together. So that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, if you guys are Godzilla fans and you buy kits, let me know in the comments that, you know, this has got more elements that I wasn't given, or this is just the way these kits come. I'm not really sure. But personally, the only things I would have done if I was a producer of this kit is I would have added metal rods into these wings as casting. I would have made sure that the lining of the skeleton was actually on both sides of the wing, because after I jumbled out, one line is here, one line is here. But I would have made sure that when I sculpted this, I would have had one major line, and then you could throw a rod into your casting, and these would have been rotted inside the resin. And then sort of kind of create a whole thing over here where it's keyed or something. Or maybe even make a hollow tail, you know, like maybe make a connecting tail and tell people like, oh, you got to put a rod in there and then it connects or something. I don't know. Something. Or even, like, you know, I have some of these metal rods in here, round rods, where you can actually bend the round rod into, you know, the resin and make the mold, and then this way you can connect it. So that's kind of just my thought process. But like I said, I don't know if it's an old kit. I don't know if it's a new kit. I have no clue. I don't know. I just did my thing. I connected it. We have one whole solid piece now, and it's all pretty much done. So I'm going to go ahead, let this dry up for today after lunch, do some of my putty work, and that is it. We're done. So let me know what you guys think. Do you like my engineering? Do you not like my engineering? Do you like the idea of, you know, maybe the producers kind of take it to the next level and add those rods in there for people and just kind of make it more feasible? Or, I don't know. I have no clue. I don't know. Just kind of rambling at this point. But let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back with some more videos.